The emergency beacon cut through space like a scream in the dark. Ambassador Tellen pressed her crystalline fingers against the transmission console as another wave of explosions shook the underground command center. Above them, the beautiful, floating cities of Seraph burned under alien fire. "Elder Corvin, we have lost contact with the northern settlements," reported Communications Officer Vale, his usually calm voice cracking with strain. "The Brutok ships are moving toward the capital." Tellen closed her eyes and tried to find peace in the ancient Rilani meditation techniques. Her people had known only harmony for 3,000 years. They had built cities that floated on antigrav, fields, created art that could make other species weep with joy, and solved conflicts through patient discussion. Violence was so foreign to them that they had no words for many military concepts. Now those same peaceful cities were falling to creatures that seemed to live for destruction. "How many of our people have we lost?" Elder Corvin asked, though his tone suggested he feared the answer. "Conservative estimates suggest 2 million civilians in the past 6 solar cycles," Vale replied quietly. "The Brutok do not take prisoners. They do not demand surrender. They simply destroy." Through the tactical display, Tellen watched red markers representing enemy ships spread across their system like a disease. The Brutok vessels looked nothing like the elegant Rilani craft. They were massive, angular things covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Each one could destroy a dozen Rilani ships without breaking formation. "What of the Galactic Council?" Corvin asked. "Surely the other peaceful species will send aid?" Tellen shook her head sadly. "The Altarians express their sympathy but claim their defense fleet is needed at home. The Cetians offer to accept refugees but cannot spare military vessels. The Harmony Coalition sends their prayers." More explosions echoed through the bunker. Emergency lights flickered as power systems struggled to maintain basic functions. On the surface, automated defense systems that had never been designed for actual warfare fired uselessly at ships built for conquest. "There must be someone," Vale whispered. "Someone in this galaxy who can fight these monsters." Tellen had been thinking the same thing. Deep in the restricted archives, there were files that most Rilani preferred not to read. Reports from the Outer Rim about a species so violent that the Galactic Council had classified their world as forbidden. Stories that seemed too terrible to believe about creatures from a planet where survival required constant battle. "There is one option," she said slowly, "but it may be worse than the disease we seek to cure." Corvin looked at her with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "Tell me." "The humans of Sol 3, the Deathworld species." The room fell silent, except for the distant sound of orbital bombardment. Every Rilani had heard whispers about the humans. They came from a world so hostile that it had forged them into apex predators. Other species spoke of them in hushed tones, describing beings that could survive in environments that would kill most galactic citizens instantly. "The reports say they are monsters," Vale said quietly, "that they wage war for pleasure and conquest, that their homeworld is covered in the bones of species they have driven to extinction. And yet," Tellen replied, accessing the classified files, "there are other reports, stories of human ships appearing when slavers attack helpless colonies, accounts of human soldiers dying to protect civilians they had never met. Perhaps they are monsters, but perhaps they are monsters that hunt other monsters." Another massive explosion shook the bunker. This one was much closer. The tactical display showed Brutok landing craft descending toward the capital city. "They will be here within hours," Corvin said grimly. "If we are to make this choice, it must be now." Tellen pulled up the emergency broadcast system. Her fingers hesitated over the controls. Everything she had been taught told her that calling the humans was madness. They were predators from a world that had somehow produced the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever catalogued. But as she watched more red markers appear on the display, she realized they were already facing monsters. The question was whether to face them alone or with help from creatures that might be even worse. "Forgive me," she whispered to her ancestors, then opened the transmission channel. The message she composed was simple. The Relani people faced extinction at the hands of the Brutok Horde. They were a peaceful species with no capacity for warfare. They requested immediate military assistance from any human forces in range. She included their star charts, their tactical situation, and a complete cultural database so the humans would understand what they were being asked to protect. Then, she added something that went against every diplomatic protocol in the Relani handbook. "We know what you are," she said directly to the camera. "We know your reputation. But we also know that sometimes monsters are needed to fight monsters. If you help us, we will owe you a debt that can never be repaid. If you choose not to help, we understand. But please, if there is any mercy in your species, remember that children are dying while I send this message." She closed the transmission and sent it toward the Sol system at maximum power. Now, all they could do was wait and hope that the humans would prove to be the kind of monsters they needed. "What have we done?" Vale asked. "What we had to do," Tellin replied, watching the tactical display as more Brutok ships entered their system. "We have asked the apex predators of Sol 3 to hunt on our behalf. May whatever gods watch over Deathworlders have mercy on us all." Elder Corvin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And may they have none on our enemies." In the darkness of space, the signal raced toward Earth, carrying with it the desperate hope of a dying civilization and an invitation that would change the galaxy forever. Dr. Rivers had been studying alien linguistics for 15 years, but she had never expected to receive a message quite like this one. The signal had reached Earth's deep space array during her night shift, and now she sat staring at the translation. Software trying to make sense of what she was reading. "Admiral Stone needs to see this immediately," she told her assistant Tom, who was already reaching for the secure communication link. Within an hour, the Situation Room at Earth Defense Command buzzed with activity. Military officers, scientists, and diplomats crowded around holographic displays showing star charts of a system 37 light-years from Earth. "Let me understand this correctly," Admiral Stone said, his weathered face grim as he studied the alien message. "A peaceful alien species is facing genocide, and they specifically requested help from us because of our reputation as violent predators?" Dr. Rivers nodded. "The translation is clear, sir. They know we come from what they call a death world. They are aware of our capacity for violence, and they are asking us to use that capacity to protect them." "What do we know about these Brutok?" asked General Cross from the Marine Corps. "Very little," Rivers admitted. "From the tactical data they provided, the Brutok appear to be a conquest-oriented species. Their ships are heavily armed and designed for orbital bombardment. They do not negotiate or take prisoners." Stone studied the star charts. 37 light-years. We could have a battle group there in 6 days using our fastest ships. "Sir," interrupted Colonel Reed from Strategic Planning, "shouldn't we consider the diplomatic implications? This would be humanity's first military intervention in galactic affairs. We don't know what alliances exist or what the political consequences might be." Dr. Rivers pulled up another section of the alien message. "Admiral, there is something else. The Relani have included their complete cultural database. They are offering us access to 3,000 years of scientific advancement, art, philosophy, and technology. But more than that, they are trusting us completely. They have no defenses against us if we choose to become conquerors ourselves." The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. These aliens were not just asking for help. They were making themselves completely vulnerable to humanity, betting their entire civilization on the hope that humans would prove to be protectors rather than predators. "What is your professional assessment, Dr. Rivers?" Stone asked. Rivers looked at the translation one more time before answering. Sir, I believe this is a test, not just of our military capabilities, but of our character as a species. The Relani are pacifists facing extermination. If we help them, we announce to the galaxy that humanity will not tolerate genocide. If we ignore them, we prove that we are exactly the monsters other species fear us to be. Admiral Stone walked to the large viewport overlooking Earth's blue oceans. How long do they have? Based on the tactical situation, perhaps 2 weeks before their homeworld falls. Stone turned back to the assembled officers. General Cross, how quickly can we deploy a battle group? The Terran Vengeance Group is on standby. 3 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 4 troop transports. They could launch within 12 hours. And who would you recommend to command this operation? Cross smiled grimly. Captain Hayes of the Vengeance. He is our best tactical commander and has experience with unconventional warfare. Stone nodded. Do it. Dr. Rivers, I want you on the flagship. We will need a Xeno specialist for first contact protocols. Sir, Colonel Reed protested, we are talking about committing human forces to an alien war based on a single distress signal. What if this is a trap? Stone looked at him steadily. Colonel, if this is a trap, then these aliens have made a fatal mistake. They will discover that humans do not go quietly to their deaths. But if it is genuine, then we have an opportunity to prove that Earth produces protectors as well as predators. 2 days later, Dr. Rivers found herself aboard the Earth warship Terran Vengeance as it dropped out of hyperspace in the Seraph system. The sight that greeted them was worse than the alien message had described. The beautiful floating cities the Relani had built were falling from the sky in flames. Massive alien warships hung in orbit like dark metal vultures, raining destruction on the planet below. The contrast was stark and terrible. The Relani cities were works of art, all graceful curves and crystalline spires. The Brutok ships were brutal and functional, designed only for death. My God, whispered Communications Officer Park as she watched a Relani city crash into the ocean far below. Captain Hayes to all ships, came the voice over the intercom. We are engaging immediately. All vessels, attack formation Gamma. Marines, prepare for boarding operations. Dr. Rivers felt her stomach lurch as the ship suddenly accelerated toward the much larger alien vessels. Through the tactical display, she could see the Brutok ships turning to face them. The size difference was terrifying. The smallest Brutok vessel was twice the size of their largest cruiser. Dr. Rivers, Captain Hayes called from the command center, try to establish communication with both species. Let the Relani know we are here to help. As for the Brutok, ask them to surrender. Rivers worked frantically at her communication console, broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Within minutes, she received a response from the planet below. This is Ambassador Tellin of the Relani High Command, came a melodic voice, speaking accented but clear English. Are you the humans from Sol 3? Confirmed, Rivers replied. This is Dr. Rivers aboard the Terran vessel Vengeance. We received your distress signal. There was a long pause before Tellin responded. We are grateful for your response, but you must understand the odds you face. The Brutok have 57 warships. You have brought 12. Captain Hayes took over the communication. Ambassador Tellin, this is Captain Hayes. We did not come here to fight fair. We came here to win. Please stand by. Rivers watched the tactical display as the human fleet spread out in what looked like a suicidal charge toward the Brutok formation. The alien ships began firing, filling space with plasma bolts and missile swarms. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of engaging in traditional ship-to-ship combat, the human vessels began weaving between the much larger Brutok ships at close range. Their smaller size and superior maneuverability allowed them to avoid most of the alien fire while targeting specific systems. What are they doing? Tellin asked over the communication link. Rivers watched in amazement as human Marines launched, themselves from their ships toward Brutok vessels in small boarding pods. They are bringing the fight inside the enemy ships, she explained. Humans prefer close-quarters combat. On the tactical display, she could see the Brutok formation beginning to lose cohesion as human boarding parties seized control of critical systems. What had started as a space battle was turning into dozens of individual fights inside alien corridors. For the first time since receiving the distress signal, Dr. Rivers began to believe they might actually win. These were humans doing what humans did best. They were adapting, improvising, and refusing to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to give up, when protecting something they believed was worth defending. Commander Blake had been in combat before, but never quite like this. The Brutok warship corridors were built for beings much larger than humans, which actually worked to his advantage as he led his Marine squad through the enemy vessel. The aliens had designed their ships expecting to face opponents who fought in organized formations, not small groups of humans who could crawl through their ventilation systems. "Sergeant Mills, take your team to the engine room," Blake whispered into his helmet communicator. "Williams, secure the weapons control center. Remember, we need these ships intact if possible. The Rilani are going to need them when this is over." The Marines moved through the ship like shadows. Blake had trained his people well in what the military called adaptive warfare. When facing a larger, more powerful enemy, you did not meet them head-on. You found their weaknesses and exploited them without mercy. The Brutok were strong, but they were also predictable. They charged straight at their enemies and relied on superior firepower to win battles. They had no experience fighting. Opponents who used stealth, misdirection, and what Blake liked to call creative problem-solving. "Sir," came Mills' voice through the communicator, "you need to see this engine room. These aliens are using some kind of matter-antimatter reactor, but the safety systems are ancient. I think Engineer Powell could jury-rig this thing to give us a lot more power." Blake smiled grimly inside his helmet. Powell was famous throughout the fleet for her ability to make alien technology work in ways its original designers never intended. She had once converted a captured pirate mining laser into a ship-to-ship weapon during the Europa incident. "Powell, get down to the engine room. Mills will show you what we have captured." While his teams secured the enemy ship, Blake made his way to what appeared to be the bridge. The Brutok Command Center was a massive chamber designed to intimidate rather than function efficiently. Everything was oversized and decorated with what looked like trophies from conquered worlds. 3 Brutok officers turned to face him as he entered. They were even larger than the intelligence reports had suggested, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick, armored skin and multiple arms. Their faces were built for intimidating prey species, all sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. The largest one spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Blake's helmet translator converted the words into English. "Small creature, you will die slowly. For daring to board our ship." Blake raised his rifle casually. "I am Commander Blake of the Terran Marines. You have 2 options. Surrender your vessel immediately, or discover why my species evolved from prey animals that refused to stay prey." The Brutok officer laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You are one tiny human facing 3 Brutok warriors. Your death will serve as an example to your cowardly species." Blake sighed and activated his helmet's external speakers. "This is Commander Blake to all human forces. We have a teaching moment here. Standard demonstration protocols apply. What happened next would be discussed in galactic military academies for generations to come. The Brutok had evolved as apex predators on a world where size and strength determined survival. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world where intelligence and adaptability mattered more than raw power. The 3 Brutok officers attacked simultaneously, moving with surprising speed for their size. Blake simply was not there when their claws reached the space where he had been standing. He moved like water around their attacks, never meeting their strength directly, but always striking at joints, nerve clusters, and other vulnerable points. Within 30 seconds, all three officers were unconscious on the deck. Blake had not even needed to fire his weapon. "This is Blake to all teams. Bridge is secured. How are we doing elsewhere?" The reports came back quickly. Mills had taken the engine. Room with no casualties. Williams controlled the weapon systems. Powell was already integrating Brutok technology with human equipment, creating hybrid systems that violated several laws of physics but worked anyway. "Sir," came Powell's excited voice, "this antimatter reactor is incredibly powerful, but they are only using about 10% of its capacity. I can boost the output by routing power through our fusion cells. It is completely insane and will probably explode eventually. But we should get enough energy to power weapons systems they never imagined." Blake activated his communicator to reach Captain Hayes on the Vengeance. "Bridge to Vengeance. We have secured the Brutok command ship. Powell is performing her usual miracles with their technology." Hayes' voice crackled back. "Outstanding work, Blake. How many enemy vessels have we captured?" Blake checked his tactical display. Human boarding parties had taken control of 8 Brutok warships. 2 more were crippled and drifting. The remaining enemy vessels were falling back in confusion. 8 ships captured, sir. 2 disabled. The Brutok do not seem to have contingency plans for close-quarters combat. Excellent. Dr. Rivers is in contact with the Rilani. Apparently, they are fascinated by our tactical approach. They want to understand how we coordinate so many simultaneous operations without central command. That made Blake smile. The Rilani were a peaceful species, but they were also highly intelligent. They were beginning to understand that human military doctrine was based on adaptability rather than overwhelming force. "Sir, what are your orders regarding the captured vessels?" Hayes paused before responding. "Blake, I want you to do something that has never been attempted in the history of warfare. I want you to turn those Brutok ships into Rilani defense platforms. Work with their engineers to understand their weapon systems, then teach the Rilani how to operate them." Blake looked around the massive bridge with its intimidating decorations and oversized control systems. "Captain, the Rilani are pacifists. They have no experience with military technology." "Then it is time they learned. Dr. Rivers tells me that the Brutok horde has dozens of fleets like this one. The Rilani will need to be able to defend themselves when we are not here to help them." As Blake began organizing teams to work with Rilani engineers, he reflected on what they were really doing here. They had not come to conquer or to impose human values on alien species. They had come to give a peaceful people the tools they needed to protect themselves. It was a strange kind of warfare, but perhaps that was what made it uniquely human. They were teaching former prey animals how to fight back against predators. They were showing the galaxy that violence could be used to create peace rather than simply to dominate the weak. "Powell," Blake called over the communicator. "How long? Until you can have these hybrid weapon systems online?" "Give me 6 hours, sir. The Rilani engineers are incredibly helpful. They understand the theory better than we do. They just never thought to apply it to weapon systems." Blake nodded and began planning the next phase of the operation. They had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The Brutok horde would send more ships, and next time they would be prepared for human tactics. But Blake was already looking forward to that challenge. Humans were at their best when facing impossible odds. It was what they had been bred for during millions of years of evolution on a world that had tried to kill them every single day. The emergency session of the Rilani High Council took place deep underground as repair crews worked to restore their shattered capital city. Ambassador Tellin stood before the assembled elders, trying to explain how their peaceful world had become the center of what appeared to be an escalating interstellar conflict. "The humans have been here for 6 days, she reported, gesturing to the holographic display showing their orbital defenses. "In that time, they have captured 12 Brutok warships, trained over 300 of our people in basic military operations, and established defensive positions throughout our system." Elder Corvin studied the tactical display with ancient eyes that had never expected to see such things. And what of the Brutok response? Our long-range sensors detect a massive fleet approaching. More than 200 ships under the command of Warlord Krex himself. They will arrive within 2 days. The council chamber fell silent. Even with their captured ships and human allies, they would be outnumbered 10-1. Perhaps, suggested Elder Mirai quietly, it is time to consider evacuation. The humans have offered to escort our population to safety. Tellen shook her head. Captain Hayes was very clear on this point. He says that running from bullies only teaches them to chase you. He believes the only way to stop the Brutok permanently is to defeat them so completely that other predator species will think twice before attacking peaceful worlds. And you trust this human captain's judgment? Before Tellen could answer, the chamber doors opened and Captain Hayes entered, followed by Dr. Rivers and Elder Corvin's aide. Hayes moved with the confident stride of a predator, but Tellen had begun to understand that human predators were different from the Brutok variety. Forgive the interruption, Hayes said, bowing respectfully to the assembled elders. But we have received word that Admiral Stone's main fleet has arrived in system. I thought you should know immediately. The tactical display updated to show 37 additional human warships taking positions throughout the Seraph system. The ships were smaller than Brutok vessels, but their formation patterns suggested a level of coordination that the Council had never seen before. Admiral Stone is requesting permission to address the Council, Dr. Rivers added. He has a proposal for dealing with Warlord Krex. Elder Corvin gestured for them to proceed. The holographic display shifted to show a stern-faced human officer aboard what was obviously the flagship of the Earth Fleet. Honored elders of the Rilani people, Admiral Stone began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I am Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force. 2 weeks ago, you sent a message to my world asking for help. Today, I am here to ensure that no force in this galaxy will ever threaten your people again. Admiral, Elder Corvin replied carefully, we are grateful for your assistance, but we must ask what price you expect for this protection. Stone smiled, and Tellen was surprised to see that it was a gentle expression rather than the predatory grin she had expected. Elder Corvin, my species learned long ago that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We ask for nothing except the knowledge that peaceful people can live without fear of those who would destroy them for profit. And what of Warlord Krex? Our intelligence suggests his fleet is the largest the Brutok have ever assembled, which is exactly why we must defeat it here and now, Stone replied. Dr. Rivers has been studying Brutok psychology with your scholars. We believe that their entire society is based on fear and domination. If we can break Krex's fleet publicly and completely, other Brutok commanders will hesitate before attacking anyone under human protection. Elder Mirai leaned forward. You speak of making examples. This sounds like the thinking of conquerors. Stone's expression grew serious. Elder Mirai, there is a difference between conquering and protecting. Conquerors take what they want. Protectors take only what they need to ensure safety. The Brutok understand only strength. If we show them weakness, they will return again and again until every peaceful species in this sector is extinct. The discussion was interrupted by urgent beeping from the tactical display. Sensor operator Vale's voice came through the communication. System. All stations. Be advised that Brutok fleet signatures have been detected at the system edge. Estimated time to engagement, 18 hours. Admiral Stone straightened. Elders, I must return to my ship to coordinate our defense. But before I go, I want you to understand something. Humanity has been fighting for survival since we first stood upright on our home world. We have faced ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and every predator our planet could produce. We are still here, because we learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to be more dangerous than anything that threatens it. After the transmission ended, The council chamber remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, Elder Corvin spoke. Ambassador Tellin, what is your assessment of these humans? Are they saviors or simply different varieties of conquerors? Tellin had been asking herself the same question since the first human ships arrived. Honored elders, I have watched them work with our people for 6 days. They do not take without asking. They do not demand tribute or submission. When they teach our engineers to operate captured weapons, they ensure that we retain control of those systems. They fight not for territory or resources, but for principles that most species have forgotten, which are that peaceful people have the right to exist, that might should protect right rather than replacing it, and that sometimes the greatest act of mercy is to ensure that evil cannot repeat its crimes. Elder Corvin nodded slowly. Very well. Send word to Admiral Stone that the Rilani people stand with humanity in this fight. We may be pacifists, but we are not cowards. If our children are to have a future, it must be a future free from the fear of predators like the Brutok. As the council prepared for what might be their final battle, none of them noticed the small recording device that Dr. Rivers had placed in the chamber. The conversation was being broadcast to every human ship in the system, and through them, to Earth itself. Across the galaxy, other peaceful species were beginning to understand that something fundamental had changed. The humans of Sol 3 were not just another predator species seeking territory. They were predators who hunted other predators to protect prey species that could not protect themselves. It was a concept that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. But first, they had to survive the next 18 hours and prove that sometimes monsters were exactly what the galaxy needed. The battle for Seraph began before dawn on the 7th day after humanity's arrival. Dr. Rivers watched from the bridge of the Terran Vengeance as Warlord Krex's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Even through the tactical display, the size of the Brutok Armada was overwhelming. 237 warships, reported Sensor Operator Park, her voice steady despite the impossible odds they faced. The largest ship appears to be Krex's personal command vessel. It's nearly 4 kilometers long. Admiral Stone's IDEP voice came through the communication system from his flagship, the Earth's Shield. All human vessels implement Formation Delta. Rilani defense platforms maintain position around the homeworld. Remember, we are not here to win a fair fight. We are here to end this threat permanently. Rivers watched as the human fleet spread out across the system in what appeared to be a chaotic scatter pattern. To untrained eyes, it looked like the humans were running away, but she had learned enough about human military doctrine to recognize the strategy. They are trying to force Krex to divide his fleet, she explained to Ambassador Tellin, who was observing from the Rilani command center on the planet below. Human tactics are based on mobility and adaptability. They want the Brutok to chase them through the asteroid fields and gas giant rings where their larger ships will be at a disadvantage. Will it work? Tellin asked. Before Rivers could answer, space exploded into violence. The Brutok fleet advanced in a massive wall of firepower, their weapons creating a light show visible even from the planet's surface. But instead of meeting them head-on, the human ships danced between the massive enemy vessels like fighters facing giants. Commander Blake's voice crackled over the communication system from his captured Brutok vessel, now crewed by a mix of humans and Rilani. All captured ships, this is Blake. Execute the Powell Protocol on my mark. Let's show these aliens what happens when humans start modifying their technology. What followed would be remembered as the moment when human engineering met alien physics, with spectacular results. Engineer Powell had spent the past week jury-rigging Brutok weapon systems with human power cores and targeting computers. The hybrid systems she created were unstable, unpredictable, and completely outside the bounds of conventional galactic warfare. The captured Brutok ships opened fire with weapons that should not have been possible. Plasma cannons that fired in, Impossible patterns, missile systems that somehow bent space-time to hit targets behind cover, and energy beams that seemed to ignore basic laws of physics. "What are they doing?" demanded Krex's voice over the Brutok communication channels, which Rivers was monitoring through captured systems. "Those are our ships firing our weapons, but the signatures are all wrong." Admiral Stone's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Warlord Krex, this is Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force. You are attacking a peaceful species under human protection. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Krex's laughter boomed across the communication channels. "Small humans. You have perhaps 50 ships against my 200. Your threats are meaningless. When I am done with you, I will strip this system of every living thing and use their bones to decorate my command chamber." "I was hoping you would say that," Stone replied calmly. "All ships, execute Protocol 7. Rivers had never heard of Protocol 7, but the results were immediately visible. Human ships throughout the system suddenly accelerated toward the Brutok fleet at speeds that should have crushed their crews. But humans had evolved on a high-gravity world, and their ships were built to handle stresses that would destroy vessels, designed for more civilized species. The human fleet tore through Krex's formation like arrows through cloth. Instead of engaging in traditional ship-to-ship combat, they focused on ramming attacks, boarding operations, and what appeared to be coordinated suicide runs against the largest enemy vessels. "They are insane," whispered one of the Rilani observers. "They are deliberately destroying their own ships." But Rivers understood what she was seeing. The humans were not committing suicide. They were making calculated trades, sacrificing damaged ships to eliminate key enemy vessels. It was the tactical thinking of a species that had learned to win through persistence and sacrifice rather than overwhelming force. The turning point came when Captain Hayes led a desperate assault on Krex's command ship. The massive vessel was protected by dozens of smaller warships. But Hayes had learned something important about Brutok psychology during the previous battles. "All ships, target the command vessel's decorative elements," Hayes ordered. "Blake was right. These aliens fight for reputation as much as territory. Let's see how brave Krex is when his pretty ship starts looking damaged." The coordinated human attack stripped away the ornamental armor and trophy displays that covered Krex's command ship. To human eyes, it was simply tactical targeting of non-essential systems. To the Brutok, it was a devastating psychological attack that made their great leader look weak in front of his entire fleet. "Impossible!" Krex screamed over the communication channels. "You dare to scar the hull of Dominion? I will tear you apart with my bare claws." That was exactly the reaction Hayes had been hoping for. Krex abandoned tactical discipline and ordered his ship to pursue the much smaller human vessel into the asteroid field, where his size advantage became a liability. Theet's final battle took place among the rocky debris of Seraph's outer system. Commander Blake had positioned the captured Brutok ships in a perfect ambush formation, while Powell's modified weapons waited for their chance to prove that human engineering could improve on any alien technology. When Krex's ship entered the asteroid field, it found itself facing not just the human fleet, but its own captured vessels firing weapons that had been redesigned by a species that viewed every piece of technology as a puzzle to be improved. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, Krex's ship was drifting powerless among the asteroids, its crew unconscious from the neural disruption weapons that Powell had somehow created from Brutok medical equipment. "This is Admiral Stone to the remaining Brutok fleet," came the announcement across all frequencies. "Your warlord has been defeated. You have two choices: surrender and accept exile from this sector, or join him in defeat. You have 5 minutes to decide." The response was immediate. Without their leader, the Brutok fleet scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Within hours, the system was clear of enemy ships except for the dozens of vessels that had surrendered or been captured. Ambassador Tellin stood in the ruins of her capital city 3 days later, watching human and Rilani workers collaborate to rebuild what the Brutok had destroyed. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just 2 weeks ago. Her people, who had never known violence, working alongside creatures from a death world to construct defensive platforms and early warning systems. "The irony is not lost on me," she said to Dr. Rivers as they observed the construction efforts. "We called for monsters to save us from monsters, and instead we found teachers." Rivers smiled as she watched a group of human engineers explaining shield technology to fascinated Rilani scientists. "That's the thing about humans, Ambassador. We're very good at being whatever the situation requires. Warriors when fighting is needed. Builders when construction is required. Teachers when knowledge must be shared." Captain Hayes approached them, looking tired but satisfied. In his hands, he carried a data pad containing what would become known as the Seraph Accords, the first formal alliance between humanity and an alien species. "The Council has approved the Defense Pact," he reported. "In exchange for human military protection, the Rilani will share their scientific knowledge and serve as cultural ambassadors to other peaceful species. It's a partnership, not a conquest." Tellen nodded, though she could see the concern in his eyes. "But you are worried about something, Captain." Hayes gestured toward the orbital display showing the captured Brutok vessels. "Word of this battle is spreading throughout the galaxy. Other predator species are beginning to see humanity as a threat to their expansion plans. Some peaceful species are requesting our protection, but others fear that allying with us will make them targets." "And what does Admiral Stone think about this development?" "He believes it was inevitable," Hayes replied. "Once humanity entered galactic politics, we were bound to change the balance of power. The question is whether we can build a coalition of protective species before the predator races unite against us." Dr. Rivers pulled up her communication display, showing messages from dozens of star systems. "It may already be happening. I've received contact requests from 17 different species. Some are asking for help against raiders and slavers. Others are offering to share technology in exchange for defense agreements. But there are also warnings that several major predator civilizations are forming an alliance against what they call the human threat." The three of them stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the future they had helped create. Humanity had answered a single distress call, but in doing so, they had announced their presence to an entire galaxy and declared their intention to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Captain," Tellen said finally, "do you regret responding to our signal?" Hayes looked out at the reconstruction efforts, where human Marines were teaching Rilani children how to operate emergency shelters while their parents learned basic self-defense techniques. "Ambassador, my species spent millions of years as prey animals before we learned to fight back. We know what it feels like to be helpless against predators. How could we ignore others facing the same threat? Even knowing that it means permanent conflict with aggressive species throughout the galaxy?" "Especially knowing that," Hayes replied, firmly, "the Brutok, and species like them, will always exist. The only question is whether their victims will face them alone, or with allies who understand that some things are worth fighting for." Elder Corvin approached their group, moving carefully among the construction debris. Despite his age, he had insisted on personally overseeing the rebuilding efforts. "Captain Hayes, I have received the final casualty reports from the battle." Hayes straightened, prepared for bad news. Military victories always came with a price. 17 human vessels were lost or severely damaged, Corvin continued. 438 human casualties, including 86 fatalities. The Rilani people will never forget that your species bled for hours without expecting anything in return. Elder, we knew the risks when we came here. No one forced us to answer your distress call. Corvin smiled, an expression that seemed strange on his crystalline features. That is exactly why we trust you, Captain. Conquerors fight for profit. Protectors fight because it is the right thing to do, regardless of cost. As if summoned by their conversation, Admiral Stone's image appeared on the communication display. He was calling from Earth, where emergency sessions of the World Council were deciding humanity's response to the galaxy's new reality. "Captain Hayes, I have new orders for you," Stone announced. "The Council has approved the formation of the Terran Protection Fleet. You are being promoted to Admiral and given command of our Rapid Response Forces. Your mission is to answer distress calls from peaceful species throughout this sector." Hayes accepted the promotion with the same steady calm he had shown throughout the crisis. "Understood, sir. What resources will be available?" "Every ship we can spare, and some we probably can't. The construction yards at Mars are working around the clock to build vessels specifically designed for protection missions. We're also establishing training programs for allied species who want to learn human defensive tactics." Dr. Rivers stepped forward. "Admiral Stone, what about the diplomatic implications? The Galactic Council has not yet officially recognized humanity's right to intervene in interstellar conflicts." Stone's expression grew grim. "Dr. Rivers, the Galactic Council has spent centuries allowing strong species to prey on weak ones. In the name of non-interference, if they want to challenge our right to protect innocent civilians, they're welcome to try. But they should understand that humanity doesn't ask permission to do what's right." After the transmission ended, the four of them stood looking up at the stars where human ships now patrolled alongside Rilani vessels, ensuring that no Predator fleet would ever again catch this system unprepared. "What happens now?" Tellen asked. Captain Hayes, now Admiral Hayes, considered the question carefully. "Now, we prove that strength can serve justice instead of replacing it. We show the galaxy that predators and prey can become partners instead of enemies. And we make sure that no peaceful species ever again has to face extinction alone." As they watched, a new group of human ships dropped out of hyperspace, carrying supplies for the reconstruction and additional defensive platforms for the outer system. But more importantly, they carried a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. Earth's children had grown up, left their nest, and appointed themselves guardians of those who could not guard themselves. The age of unchallenged predation was over. The age of protection had begun, and whether the galaxy liked it or not, humanity was here to stay.